Zelda cutscenes. You love them or you hate them. Just let me get back to the game already! But the fact is, they're here to stay. So I could go on about how it all started and everything, but how about we just roll this thing? About a quarter of the way into The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Link returns to his home on Outset Island. If you remember to bring a fairy in a bottle with you, you can actually do something unprecedented in Zelda history. You can use it on someone else. Granny gets healed and offers you some of her badass soup, which will refill your life and magic at any time. Not once, but twice. It's just a nice happy scene in an otherwise dark section of the game. Most games have an aha moment that tells you the game is going to be freaking awesome. For Ocarina of Time, this was that moment. Just before the great Deku Tree dies, he relinquishes all the information he has about the Triforce, the three goddesses, and how the very world was made. You're just getting a sneak peek here. Anyone else always think of Death Mountain when they see this shot? Or maybe that chocolate track on Mario Kart 64? Anyway, it's a big piece of story, but one of many, as you'll soon find out. When Link wanders into the mountainous northern regions of Termina, he comes across a withering herd of Gorons, and at the very top he meets the ghost of their leader, Darmani, who has long since passed away. He plays the Song of Healing to soothe Darmani's heartache, and soon gets to become Darmani himself. Sort of. But not before we see a quick look at what Darmani's life was like. Not only was he a well-loved and respected leader, but he appreciated the love and respect, and in death he even seems to miss it, as no doubt anyone would. There's just something touching about it. After practically half of a game full of Mega Man Shut! Link finally catches up to the love of his life, Princess Zelda, only to find that she has a certain bit of business to attend to, and it involves going to sleep for 1,000 years. Of course, Link still hasn't really learned how to wear the pants in the family, so he gets no say about it. Zelda then encases herself in a crystal, leaving Link to only pound his fists and shout her name or whatever Link would do if he could talk. This is another kind of happy scene in an otherwise dark section of a game. Well, a dark game, really. Link's childhood friend Ilia is brought on a little case of the amnesia, and Link has to play Channing Tatum to her Rachel McAdams and get her to remember the vow. Not really. Anyway, after a series of fetch quests, he brings her the one thing that finally does jog her memory, and we celebrate. Even the horse looks happy. The entire last hour of Ocarina of Time is phenomenal. I know not all of it is one cutscene, but I couldn't very well just pick one part of this. The spawning of Ganon's final form, I mean, that's as good as anything has ever looked on the N64. Elsewhere, we have the touching moments of Zelda and Link saying goodbye to some fond memories as Link goes back to reclaim his childhood. And of course, the shot of the sages on the mountain. I always liked that. Granted, you may hate me for saying this, Ocarina of Time is probably not in my top 3 Zelda games. In fact, I probably consider it to be the most overrated. However, as endings go, Ocarina's was the best. Who doesn't love a girl that can sing? At some point in Link's awakening, Link needs to bring this chick Marin to sing for some walrus who won't get out of the way. But when he goes to get her, he ends up sitting with her on the beach as she ruminates about the island, about whether there's life out there. It is a calming moment in the quest, and this wasn't too common back then in Zelda games, or in any games for that matter. Even though he might have OD'd on the Twinkies, you gotta admit, Ganon in Wind Waker was one badass motherf***. Everything leading up to and including the final battle in Wind Waker was epic. You can harp on about the cel-shaded, cartoony graphics all you want, but as final battles go, they get you good and primed for this one. The best moment, of course, is just as Ganon's about to claim the Triforce's power as his own, when the king appears out of nowhere and cock blocks him. Stupid villains always talking, you know? You tell that asshole. Throughout the entirety of Majora's Mask, you face off against many hardships, many of which are not even your own, and that may just be the hardest thing about it. You wear the burden of so many different stories, and there's just never enough time to help everyone. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because Mr. Moon's just overhead, constantly reminding you that your precious little planet is on borrowed time, and 72 hours is all you got before you get burned to a crisp. That is, of course, unless you recover all of the sacred masks back from the 4 guardians at the 4 corners of Termina. In that case, the results are a bit more unusual. This is still one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. At this point in time, game developers were on the brink of making things start to look very realistic in games, and then suddenly out of the blue you see something like this. How can something so unrealistic look so real? The accompaniment of the Oath to Order is another essential ingredient in this, the first of our top 5. When someone says anything about great Zelda cutscenes, this is always the first scene that comes to my mind. Granted, I did decide it wasn't the greatest. Hell, I'd be dodging tomatoes if I did. The cinematics of this entire section are just brilliant. When King Bulblin pulls his mask up to show his face, and Barnes pulls his Welling mask, how does anyone not laugh at that? And when Link comes on the scene, boy does he look pissed. Of course, you get dragged into a wild goose chase of what essentially amounts to a couple of minigames involving sword skill on horseback. But I feel like this scene is important in showing that even though these characters are largely inconsequential to the story, they are the reason that Link does what he does. He does it to protect everyone, even the little guys. Especially the little guys. And when he finally gets to make his point by smashing Bulblin over the side of a bridge, you know it's true. Early in the 00s, the 2000s, what are we calling this decade anyway? Well, early in this decade, we started seeing a lot of movies about time travel, and especially its effects on the memory. It's been a prevalent subject in pop culture ever since. Of course, it's no coincidence that Zelda beat them to the punch with the legendary child-to-adult transition that Link has to undergo, and the catalyst for what has become one of the biggest debates in recent Zelda history, the timeline. All that aside, this moment is breathtaking. It's not often you can get away with hyping something like this and actually getting praised in the end, but Ocarina deserves every bit of praise it gets for this moment. As a player, you can't wait to get out there and try the grown-up Link, yet at the same time, you're savoring every moment of anticipation as the Sage Rauru gives you the drill. The game draws out your anticipation further with the Sheik cutscene that occurs just afterward, and then you see Death Mountain for the first time when you walk outside, and it's awesome, man! You had to figure this one was going to be up there, but what could possibly be better than Anju and Kafei? These two star-crossed lovers find themselves in a pickle when Kafei, the guy, pulls a no-show on Anju. But little does she know he's hiding from her because he doesn't want her to see that he's been turned into a child. In what has been described as the greatest side quest in all of Zelda, Link goes through a series of carefully timed events to establish a line of communication between the two. But Kafei has more than one thing on his mind. His mask has been stolen. The masks are like the wedding rings for these two. With one last small dungeon-like obstacle, Link helps Kafei to retrieve the lost mask, and just as the moon is on the verge of crashing into the planet, Kafei makes it back in time to profess his love. If Link is quick enough, and who are we kidding, we know he is, he can just waltz right on and watch the whole thing happen for himself. The lovers are reunited, and at peace with the fact that they are minutes away from dying. Yep, cue the tomatoes, and throw some at Darunia while you're at it, because look at this guy! Just what the heck? Seriously? This is the kind of scene that, as a player, left me with my jaw hanging open. I just could not believe what I was witnessing. They can't be serious, right? Link arrives at Death Mountain to discover that the Gorons are starving to death because their supply of tasty rocks has been cut off, and King Dodongo's hogging them up. Darunia is expecting the arrival of a hero, but when he sees Link instead, he goes into a fury and just starts ranting and raving. That is, until... And there you have it, classic case of music soothes the savage beast, or sets him off into a steroid-induced frenzy. I love the way Link decidedly backs away just as Darunia is starting to break out. Like, sir? Sir? Hell, I was confused enough, I don't even want to know what Link must have been thinking. And there it is, my own private top 13 Zelda cutscenes. Believe me, there are plenty of scenes I hated to omit here, including Mikau's song, Link getting blasted into the Forsaken Fortress, the almost victory at Armogoma. Man, there's just so many good ones. But that's Zelda for you.